So we were talking about the tissue, right? And you know that there are 4 different types of tissues are present in our body: connective tissue, epithelial tissue, muscle tissue, which is also called muscular tissue, and neural or nervous tissue. So those are 4 different types of tissue. In last lecture, I talked about the epithelial and connective tissue. So today we will talk about the nervous tissue and the muscle tissue or muscular tissue. Okay. So nervous tissue is found in your nervous system, and you know that nervous system consists of the brain, the spinal cord, and the nerves. So those are the structures where you will find the nervous tissue: brain, spinal cord, and in the nerves. Nervous tissue is very delicate and highly sensitive tissue. That means they can easily die. You know, if you stop the circulation of blood to your brain, like if I press here, right, and stop the circulation to the brain, then brain tissue dies very quickly. We know that, right? So, very delicate and sensitive. Needs continuous supply of oxygen and glucose. In the nervous tissue, there are 2 types of cells. The main cells are the neurons, and the supporting cells are neuroglias or neuroglial cells. Those are the supporting cells. The function of a neuron is production and transmission of electrical signal. So electrical signal generation and transmission are the functions of the neurons. And you know that your nervous system is a control system, and it controls all other systems of your body. You have learned that, right, before. Nervous system is the main control system of your body. So nervous system controls the whole body functions, and we can say that neural tissue or nervous tissue controls the body functions. Now, if you see a neural tissue under the microscope, it looks like this. You'll see neurons, the main cells, and you'll see the nuclei of the supporting cells. Many tiny nuclei of neuroglial cells. Now, a neuron, typical neuron, has a cell body and processes. So you'll see neurons as well as nuclei of supporting cells. A neuron has a cell body, axon, usually single, and multiple dendrites. Okay. Inside the cell body, you'll see the nucleus. So that's the neural tissue or nervous tissue. Muscle tissue or muscular tissue. Muscle tissue or muscular tissue helps in the contraction. Okay, helps in the contraction. So, or we can say work by contraction. There are three types of muscle tissues found in the body: skeletal muscle tissue, cardiac muscle tissue, and the smooth muscle tissue. Skeletal muscle tissue forms the skeletal muscles, and skeletal muscles are attached to the skeleton. So very simple. Skeletal muscles are found attached to the skeleton. That means attached to the bones and help in the movement of the bones at the joints. So we move our body parts by the skeletal muscles. Now, skeletal muscles are voluntarily controlled. That means we can control. If you decide that you will move your forearm, you can do that, right? So we can control the contraction of the skeletal muscles voluntarily, willingly. If you see the skeletal muscle tissue under the microscope, you will see that muscle fibers are long cylindrical fibers. So muscle fibers are very long and cylindrical shaped. Inside the muscle fiber, you will see striations, fine lines. Okay, so number one, long cylindrical fibers. Number two, striations. Number three, multiple nuclei. Inside a muscle fiber, you see several nuclei, and they are located not centrally, not in the center of the muscle fiber, but peripherally located multiple nuclei. Peripherally located multiple nuclei. Okay, I think it's EH, right? Yeah. Peripherally, oh, I'm not sure. Okay. Other thing, peripherally, F or PH? PH. Okay. Peripherally located multiple nuclei. Okay. So that is the skeletal muscle tissue under the microscope. Now, if you see the cardiac muscle tissue, cardiac muscle tissue is only found in the heart. So it is a highly specialized type muscle tissue, highly specialized type muscle tissue, only found in the wall of the heart. And the cardiac muscle tissue is involuntary. That means you cannot control the heart. You know that you cannot stop the heart unless you kill yourself, right? If you tell your heart to stop, it will not listen to you, which is good, right? Sometimes we think that my life is useless, right? And but heart will not listen to you. It will not stop working. When you sleep, your heart is continuously pumping, right? So the cardiac muscle tissue is highly specialized tissue. It continuously contracts and relaxes and pumps the blood, and involuntarily will not listen to you. It does by itself. If you see the cardiac muscle tissue under the microscope, what you will see? You will see cylindrical fibers, but these fibers are much shorter than skeletal muscle fibers, and inside the fiber you will see striations. So those two things are similar as the skeletal muscle. cylindrical fibers but shorter than skeletal. Striations are present. Usually single nucleus. Okay, usually single nucleus. Another important thing in cardiac muscle is intercalated discs, where two muscle fibers join. So this is one muscle fiber, this is the nucleus. This is another muscle fiber. Where two muscle fibers join, you will find a thick band, that is the intercalated disc. Okay. Another thing is the muscle fibers often branches. So you will see branches come out from the muscle fibers and get attached to the next muscle fiber, another muscle fiber. Okay, so this is the branching. Okay, so you can add that here. So these are the histological properties. That means under the microscope you will be able to see these things to identify the cardiac muscle. Okay. Smooth muscle. Smooth muscle is present in the wall of tube-like structures I mentioned before. In the wall of tube-like structures in your body. For example, esophagus, right? Intestine, arteries, veins. Those are tube-like structures. Number two, in the wall of hollow organs. Those organs have cavities like stomach, urinary bladder, uterus. In the wall of those hollow organs, you will find a smooth muscle. Smooth muscle is also involuntary. You know that you cannot contract the blood vessels. You cannot close the blood vessels. It should always stay open, right? So you cannot do that. So it is involuntary. Now smooth muscle is very simple. If you see the fibers are spindle shaped, like your eye. Nice spindle shaped fibers. A single nucleus located centrally. So not cylindrical but spindle shaped fibers. Spindle shaped fibers. Okay, number one. Number two, no striation, no branching, no intercalated disc, only a single nucleus located central. So centrally located single nucleus. So that's the smooth muscle, very simple. Both ends are pointed in the fibers. Okay. Here you see in the picture many smooth muscle fibers are together and you don't see the cell membranes clearly. So it looks like this, but actually it is like this. Many spindle shaped fibers are together. Okay. So those are three types of muscle tissues where you will find and the histological properties, that means under the microscope how they look like. Now we'll talk about a process, inflammation. You very often hear this word, right? Inflammation. What is inflammation? Inflammation is the response of your tissue. Response of the tissue to injury. So when an injury occurs in your tissue, how your tissue responds? That is inflammation. Okay. So now you tell me, when you get any injury in your tissue, what kind of changes you see in the tissue? If something bites you, what do you see in that area?
Red.
Redness, right? Swelling gets like, yeah, bump, right? Anything else? Pain. If you touch that area, you'll feel slightly warm, right? So those are the signs of inflammation: redness, swelling, increased temperature, and pain. Okay. Now, why those changes occur at the site of inflammation? When you get injury, what happens? Some chemicals are released from the tissue. Chemicals are released from the tissue. So the chemicals are like histamine, prostaglandin. There are different types of prostaglandins. We say PG, okay, prostaglandins. So this is the tissue. You know that tissue consists of similar cells. So these are the cells in the tissue. And you know that in the tissue you have the capillaries, capillary bed. So these are the capillaries. And also you have nerves, nerve fibers, right? Everywhere. So what happens when injury occurs? These chemicals are released at the site of inflammation, and these chemicals do two things, important things. One is dilate the capillaries. So capillaries get dilated, wider. Now you tell me, if all these capillaries here get wider, then more or less blood will flow here. Very simple question, right? If the capillaries get wider, what will happen? More or less blood will go. More blood will flow there, right? So the color of the tissue will become red. More blood means more red. Is it clear? So that gives the redness. Now when you see here, this is the capillary wall. We know that in the capillary wall you have tiny holes because exchange occurs through the capillary wall, right? Gas exchange or nutrient exchange. So we have many tiny holes in the wall of the capillaries. Now when the capillaries get wider, the holes in the wall also get wider, bigger. Make sense? So water leaks, fluid gets out, okay, from the capillaries. So fluid will accumulate in that area. That causes swelling, edema. Make sense? So accumulation of water or fluid in the interstitial spaces. That fluid comes out from the capillaries, because when the capillaries get wider, the holes get bigger. Okay, so the fluid can leak out. Make sense? Can easily get out. Pain. These nerve fibers get stimulated, particularly by prostaglandins. When the nerve fibers are stimulated, you feel pain. Pain signal is transmitted to the brain from the nerves. Another thing is increased temperature. That area is slightly warmer than rest part of the body. Why is that? You know, the blood is slightly warmer than your body. Okay, blood is slightly warmer than your body. So if more blood flows in that area will be slightly warmer than other areas. Clear? So the redness and increased temperature, those things are due to increased blood flow. More blood flow makes the area red and increase the temperature. Makes sense? Increases the temperature. And irritation or stimulation of the nerve endings, nerve fibers by the chemicals cause pain. And leaking of the fluid through the capillary wall causes the swelling or edema. Is that clear? Alright? Okay. Now, after injury, we know that tissue dies, cells die. So, how the healing or repair of tissue occurs? First, the fibroblasts, the most common type of connective tissue, fibroblasts produce collagen fibers. So new collagen fibers are produced by the fibroblast in that area, and those collagen fibers do what? Fill the gap. Fill the gap or bridging the gap. Number 2, macrophages engulf the dead cells or injured cells. So macrophages, you know, macrophages do phagocytosis. So by phagocytosis, macrophages engulf the dead cells, debris, injured cells. Those things are removed or cleaned by the macrophages. So filling is done by the fibroblasts, cleaning is done by the macrophages. Okay. Then branching of the blood vessels. From the adjacent blood vessels, new branches arise and they enter into that area. So new blood vessels enter into that area. Branching. And then last is the covering. You know, the surface must be covered. So that covering is done by the epithelial tissue. We know that epithelial cells regenerate very fast, right? We have talked about that. Regeneration, high rate of regeneration. So epithelial tissue will cover the surface, make the surface smooth. So just remember 4 steps. Number 1 is filling, done by what? Fibroblasts. They produce new collagen fibers, right? Those fibers will fill the gap. Number 2, cleaning, done by macrophages, phagocytic cells, right? They will engulf the dead cells and other injured cells. Number 3 is branching, done by the adjacent blood vessels, right? From the adjacent blood vessels, nearby blood vessels. And last is covering, that is done by the epithelial tissue. Excellent. So that's how the repair of tissue at the site of injury or inflammation occurs. Okay, so those are the things you need to know from the tissue.